All right, we're good. Hey, how's everybody doing? It's been an exciting couple of days. For anyone who was here yesterday morning for Philip Rathley's keynote about why GraphRAG is important, it was super exciting, and we can tell from the conversations we've been having the last couple of days just how our biggest question is, oh, this sounds really exciting, how do we actually do it? So what I'm gonna do with you folks today is just walk through how you can actually get started. So obviously we're talking about retrieval augmented generation, which everybody has spent quite a bit of time with over the last year, I'm sure. And we recognize that we have the prompt, we've got the application, but we really want to ground it in something. We want to ground it in some sort of external data. But the question is, what do you use for that external data? Right now, in all of your enterprise stores, you have your vector stores that you're probably using now, but you also have structured data. You have some semi-structured data. Maybe you've got a NoSQL database, or you have documents that you're really trying to leverage. And so what you can actually do with a graph is to actually create this superset data structure for RAG. So the question then becomes, what is a graph actually? So for those of you who may be less familiar with graph, I'm going to go over just a couple of the basics. Within graph, we have nodes that represent entities. Oftentimes we talk about these as the nouns. So in this case, we have an example of a person label, a person node. We have two examples. And we have a car entity, a car node. But then what we have is we have these relationships among these entities. So you can think of it in your traditional ERD, maybe you've got a table of people and you've got a table of cars, and in your people table, there's a foreign key to a car model. In a graph, everything is already connected. So rather than having to constantly be creating multiple joins, the graph itself is already connected, and it's connected through these relationships. So we can see a couple of different relationships here. Some of them, they're all directed. The first person knows the second person, so they know each other. One of them lives with the other. I'm not sure why that's one direction, but it is in this particular instance. We can see that one person owns the car and the other person drives the car, which is actually the case at my house as well. So we have these relationships. And the other thing too, though, is we know that that's not everything. There's lots and lots of other details about these entities and about these relationships. And so the question is, well, Alison, where does that data live? And that data lives in something called a property. So all of your nodes and entities have properties, and your relationships can have properties as well. So for example, we see that Andre has been driving the car since January of 2011, and we clearly have information about this particular Volvo. One of the things that you'll notice down in the bottom is we see description embedding. So for everybody who's been using your vector databases, this should look really familiar. This is the embedding of the actual description that we're seeing here as well. So when you're using a graph database, rather than having to have a separate vector database, the vectors are actually features within the data in this data structure itself. So you don't need something separate. So just to understand a little bit about how the graph structures are set up. So again, we're talking about RAG. So this kind of diagram should look really familiar. You've got your prompt. It's going to go through your GenAI API. You're going to get the information that you're looking for from the graph retrieval. And we'll talk in a little bit more detail about that in a second. It's going to hit your database. Those relevant documents are going to be pulled through, passed back, and you get your answer. So why do you want GraphRAG rather than just a traditional RAG? One of the pieces is that it can actually enhance the relevance with more domain context. So think of it this way. When we were looking at Andre and the car and the description, maybe we want to know about owners of cars that have a certain aspect. And maybe it's a description. Maybe there's something in the description of the Volvo, and it's not something that you can get from a keyword. And so I want to actually trace from that embedding to something structured, like who are the owners or who are the drivers. So it's going to allow you to use that vector to get to a place and then spread out and get more context that isn't just about the vector. We all know that when we go to the vector directly, it's really good at getting to there, but where's the context, especially if we're looking for some sort of structured context? It's also going to allow you to improve your explainability with these human readable relationships. So when we've gotten to that vector and we say, oh, it's owned by this person, or it's driven by this person, you can actually explain very clearly what's coming out of the data and why your application is producing that in particular. And then the last thing is it allows you to accelerate this GenAI application development with robust coding and integrations. The folks at Neo4j love to build things, and we love to build things open source. So everything that I'm showing you today, none of it's behind the paywall. It's all going to be available to you to get started and do your POCs. And so you can actually use a lot of the different tools that all of our researchers and engineers have been building for you that we're going to show you today. So you're really going to be able to move really quickly into getting your applications up and running. So what does this actually mean? So clearly we see we have all these different data sources. We've got our structured data. We have embeddings for your unstructured data, different kinds of models that you may be using. And then we've got entity recognition. So one of the things that we're going to show you today is your unstructured data is not just about the chunk and the embedding. It's about what is the context that is derived from that, and how can we leverage that context for these more complete answers. So let me show you how we actually go about doing that. One of the things that you may be asking yourself is, okay, well, I've got this, I take my data and I put it into this graph database, but how do I do things differently than I'm doing when I just use a vector DB? And there's a number of different GraphRAG patterns, and I'm going to show you some of them now just for reference, so as they come up, they'll make sense to you. How many people here want to learn another coding language? Anyone? Anyone? Oh yeah, okay, there's a few, there's always a few in the crowd. One of the things that can sometimes be a blocker for folks when we're looking to get into a new database structure is learning a new language. Cypher is the sequel of Graph, but we do have lots of natural language that will allow you to do text to Cypher, so you can use natural language to produce those queries. Obviously, we're used to the vector search, but in our case, you have vector search plus graph context. So it's not just that Volvo description, it's the Volvo description plus Andre, or plus Andre's previous car, if you want to find something like that. Obviously, agents, it's the year of the agent, as we all know. The other element that you can, as you get further on your journey, is you can actually create vectors of the graph themselves. So you can create node embeddings and entities. We're not covering all of that today. And then also your graph filtering. Are there certain aspects of the graph that you want to return? Everybody's been talking about our governance, right? Whether it's a governance issue or whether it's a document prioritization issue for the use case, the ability to use filtering of the graph itself when you're building your applications is also going to be important. So all of these different patterns and retrieval strategies are things that we have developed, that we have available to you. So any questions you have about those, you can certainly come find me. But here's the question: how do you actually get started? It all sounds great on paper, but what do I do? So the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to think about your data. And you're like, Alison, I think about my data all day, every day. It's what I do. When you're trying to start with GraphRAG, and these are my personal recommendations, the first thing that I want you to think about is start with something small. You don't want to boil the ocean. What you want to see is impact and value, and you want to see it quickly. So when you're thinking about your POC and what you're going to experiment with, think about something really small. Is there a RAG application that you're doing right now that you wish you had some additional context on? Or do you find that people are trying to get maybe aggregations or some sort of calculation out of the RAG application that you have, and you're like, it doesn't do that. What are you talking about? So think about something that you already have in play or that you want to do, but really think of a small sort of use case. The other thing I then want you to do is, once you have this idea of what am I going to do that's small, think about it. Is it just unstructured data that we've put in a vector DB? Am I trying to bring in something structured as well? Do I want to try RAG on structured data? Or is it a hybrid? So really just think through within your case what each of those pieces are. And the reason that's important is because what I want you to do next is I want you to do something called drawing your data. You ever just sit at a whiteboard? I mean, I'm a huge whiteboard fan, total nerd, have like Post-it whiteboards all over my house. What I want you to do is draw your data. So we think about Andre and the Volvo. We think about who's driving, who's owning. In your current RAG use case, what are the entities that you're using? What are the relationships that they might have? When you sit down to draw your data, you'd be surprised how quickly it comes together. The example I'm showing you today is actually a little bit of data from my husband's research. He works in leveraging graph to understand policy development, different kind of nerdy stuff than our nerdy stuff, academic nerdy bits. And so what I had him do is I said, well, draw me what you're talking about. And he said, well, I have people, my husband studies special education funding. He's like, well, I have people that work at different organizations and they've published things, but those documents cite other documents, and each of those documents have different concepts. And all we did was we literally stood in our kitchen and drew it out. And anytime he said a noun, we draw a noun with a circle, and we draw the relationships between it. We do have arrows.app, which is a way that you can sit and draw it. You can do it on a piece of paper. The reason it's important to draw your data is because it's going to help inform the actual building of your knowledge graph. There are lots of ways that you can go about doing this, but I definitely encourage you to sit down and draw your data. So if you're going to draw your data and you're like, okay, no, but then there's the option of, okay, Alison, but like, I don't really know. It's all this unstructured company data. I don't really know what's important. I don't know which entities we should be having in it. I have good news for you. We do have some tools to help you with that as well. So one of the things that we are going to go over today, the first thing I want to do is just give you the QR so that you can actually set up a graph database. We have a free tier on our Aura, on our managed cloud instance, because we really want everyone to just get in and test it out and play with it. So this is going to take you to the Aura console where you can sign up for your free tier. The next thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about another one of the super fun, exciting tools that our team at Neo4j has built called the Knowledge Graph Builder. Because a lot of times what you're tasked with is somebody says, here's all of our PDFs, go do AI. And you're like, okay, that sounds great. Like, I don't know what's in this stuff, but hopefully it works, right? So what we've done is we've gone through and built the Knowledge Graph Builder. So in the Knowledge Graph Builder, what you have the opportunity to do is drag and drop. Who here is like good for a drag and drop? I know we're coders, we love that, but when you're trying to POC something every now and then, a drag and drop is helpful. So you can actually drag and drop documents, you can drop images, you can drop your PDFs. So you can drag and drop them right into the system. The other thing that we have the option for is you can actually include websites or Wikipedia sites that you might want to include. We've tried to give you the tools to just get things going. So I'm going to do all this live and, demo day. We always hope that things go as they should. So I'm pulling in just the basic website from the Vermont Department of Education Special Education. And I am going to drop that into this graph here. It says it's a UF. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. See, demo days, there's always a quick mistake. So you're just gonna click on the web, I'm gonna submit this and I'm going to add this in. So what it's doing right now is it's going out to that website and it's scanning. One of the things, I set up an empty database just to show you what's in there. So right now, there's nothing in the database. Right? There's no nodes, there's no relationship, nothing is there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop things directly into the graph builder. All right, so we've got this. Did it submit? Did it submit? I think I clicked submit, did I? Yes, we did. Okay, that was scanning, great. So we'll close that out. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to also drop a PDF in here, which should be on my desktop. Yeah, this is a parent's rights in special education in Vermont. So we're going to drop that in as well. And so what we're seeing is we see that this is a new document, it's been uploaded, and what is going to happen is we are actually going to generate the graph. Where's my graph? and we are going to generate this graph. So what's happening right now, yep, it's processing, we're working on it. So what's happening right now in the background, everything that's in Knowledge Builder is open source, it's on GitHub, you can take it, alter it, do whatever you need with it. But really what's happening in the background is we're doing entity recognition that's in these items, it's looking, then it will go through from those entities and say what are the relationships, and it's going to automatically build you a graph. So this is an especially great way to get started if you don't know what your graph might look like. Now that said, it's going to spread very wide what those relationships might be. The text itself is going to inform the algorithms of what it's finding. So what we've done is we've gone through and we've built something called graph enhancements. So in this case, you can actually define your own schema. So for example, when I said take the time to draw your data, this is a way that you can use it. So if I know that there's going to be a concept, I know that there's going to be a person, I know there's going to be an organization, right? So like when I drew this data here, I could take these labels and I can take these references and covers and these relationships and add them into the graph enhancement. So it's really just a guide to the graph builder that says, I know that these are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. So let's actually drop that in there. So that's the way that we can do that. The other thing that it allows you to do is sometimes you might find when it's, again, drawing a wide net on your unstructured data, you might have nodes that really aren't connected to anything else and they're not helpful. So maybe you want to address those. The other thing that can come up is deduplication of nodes. How many times, all right, anybody here spent way too much time fuzzy matching in their life? Anyone? Anyone? Yeah, me too. So what this will do is this will give you an idea that it says, oh, these nodes like seem like they might be similar. Do you want to merge those? Do you want to deduplicate? Right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to help you with that data quality and the quality of the graph itself. Because we all know that when your RAG application is live, you want to get to the most relevant information as quickly as possible to give your best result. So these are some pieces that we have here. There's some post-processing options. But what we can see now is we can see that each of these have been completed. And so now if I go back into my workspace, hopefully I can see my graph now. Everybody, like, pray to the demo gods that everything works out. We know how this goes. Please, internet, be my friend. All right, well, the internet is a little bit slow. But the idea is what we can do now is we can actually preview the graph itself. And so what this does is once you've loaded everything in, is there really, what? You know, it's definitely a thing. Let me see. We're gonna do these one more time. We want this one, we want this one. Let's generate this graph. Generating the graph. Still generating the graph. So what's going to happen is it's going to go through and it's going to not only find those entities and those relationships, but it's also going to chunk the document and create the embeddings. So the final graph that you're going to see is you're going to see the document, you'll see the entities that are mentioned in that document, the relationships among those entities, and then you'll also see each of the chunks as they're related to the document, and you'll also see the first chunk as well as the last chunk, and you'll see next in between. What it allows you to do is I don't know your business and your data as well as you do. Sometimes when you want to bring in context, you'll want to traverse the graph through entities. So from this vector, tell me all the people that were also mentioned or related to this. Or you can say, bring me back the chunk before and the chunk after and put all that into your context. So there's lots of different ways that you can leverage these retrieval patterns in order to get your GraphRAG going. All right, we're almost done processing. Can I preview the graph now? Might not be quite ready. We shall see. So we can see a couple of different things. The first thing that we're going to see is we're going to see the document. We are going to see the chunk right? So the document is the big blue one in the middle. The pink ones are the chunks. And then what we see is which are the types of entities that were acknowledged. So we see concept, organization, laws, people, regulation. So like I said, if you don't know what your graph schema might need to look like, let the graph builder give you an overview. And then from there you can say, oh yeah, that is how this business works, or that is what this data is all about. We can see, like I said before, there's all kinds of different relationships that may come up. Be informed of, bring support, considered by. And this is where once you run this and you kind of get an idea of what's in there, you can say, okay, now maybe I'm going to go back and I'm actually going to draw. And I'm going to think about those relationships. And then you can use that schema to really refine what's in the knowledge graph itself. Because ultimately, we want to know that you have the relationships you need to get to the answers that you're looking for. Anybody have any questions so far? Anyone? I know, it's right, so obvious, right? So the other thing I want to show you is is this gonna, come on internet, help me out here. All right, are we connected? We are connected. All right, so now that both of these documents are processed, we can see all the different nodes. So just from that one website and that one PDF, we have 124 different nodes. These are the different nodes that we have. These are the relationships that we have. So you've literally gone from not ever building a graph yourself to now having a graph that you can use. So in Graph Builder, you can actually start to converse directly in here. So I can say, let's see, tell me about special education in Vermont. And it's going to go in, obviously it's going to do the vector, it's going to bring back some information. If I had asked this before I dropped it in, the way that we've built it is it's not going to give you any answers unless it's referring to something that's already in the database. So if I had asked this question before we did the uploads, it would have said, I don't know anything about that. There is no data, right? So here, you know, the Individuals with Disability Act, et cetera, et cetera. So what I want you to know is that getting started with Graph is actually a pretty easy onboard. Do you want to refine it? Do you want to draw it? Do you want to get tidier as you get closer to production? Of course. The last thing that I want to point out that's also available to you in Neo4j Workspace, which is sort of your graph IDE, is we also have something called import. So if you have some structured data, in this case, you know, like I would do something a little bit different just because I don't have these CSVs for you. But you can actually directly map a CSV into this here. So for example, why is this looking really big? One of the things when you're doing the displays is it makes it a little bit harder to show everything. But you can actually directly map and just upload your CSVs directly through import. We also have many, many drivers. We've got Python drivers, Java, JavaScript, like Go. I don't even know how many drivers we have. I'm sure one of our folks, Mark in the back, probably knows how many drivers we have. So depending on how you want to get in and play with it. But really the whole point is that you can actually get started with GraphRAG really quickly. The other thing I was going to say is once you get in there and you start playing with it and you start looking at your data, my job as a developer advocate is just to help you build things. I am really easy to find on LinkedIn. Direct message me. I will give you a link to my calendar. If you have any questions, you want to noodle, you get stuck, definitely reach out. We have free courses on Graph Academy that can walk you through zero to chatbot in next to no time. But what I want you to really think about is how can I continue to serve the business, continue to serve the application with a RAG application with more context. right? How can I bring in calculations as an option, right? In the retrieval options, you can say, I want to bring in this, I want to run this cipher query. But all you have to say is, how many people drive a Volvo Model X whatever? And what it will do is it will allow you to create in Neo Converse, it'll allow you to create the cipher for you, and you can get that calculated answer back. So it's not just about the embeddings, it's not just about the unstructured text, it's about how do we move forward and connect those unstructured elements with all of this massive structured value that we have in the rest of our data stores in this knowledge graph, this super data set level, to really serve our applications and serve our users of those applications with the best possible output from all of their GenAI applications. So as I said, I am Alison. Workspace is the IDE. This is my email address if you need me. I'm easy to find, and I hope you take a graph journey. And when you do, let me know how it's going. Thank you all so much.